Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. This is the Hillbilly Think Tank, and I am coming at you live from Tunnel Hills in Hardin County, Kentucky, where I'm running for magistrate in District 3. And here in District 3, we know that life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness is what our whole democracy and republic was established upon. And anything that steps in to stop that is anti-democratic and it's anti-American. So we've got a guest on here today. I'll let him introduce himself, and then I'll talk a little bit about what I did today before we take a deep dive into a horrible application of taking someone's life away from them unjustly, which is un-American. All right, you take it away.
Hey, how you doing? I go by the name of Santana. I'm out here in Memphis, fighting the good fight. Spencer Hillbilly Think Tank, really big fan of the show, and honored to be on.
All right, so today there were about 5 events that I made it to here in beautiful Hardin County. Started off in the morning, went to the Hardin County Cooperative Extension, and they had a plant sale and exchange day. Man, lots of people out there. It was really great. I got some good local plants along with some heirloom plants for my garden. And I think my garden is about to get exactly where I need it to be for survival now that all of our food is becoming so expensive. I'm going to try to grow as much of my own. And like I said before, I'm going to be a locavore this year once I get this thing truly rolling. Got chickens in the backyard, giving us plenty of eggs, a couple roosters to cull once or twice a week for protein. Yeah, we're on a roll. The bees are buzzing. It's, pretty good.
That's the way to go.
It's where we've got to go, right?
Yeah.
So after that, I rolled over to the American Legion, where the Combat Veterans Motorcycle Association was having their spring fling. Went to reapply for membership there again. Hopefully I can rejoin, get my old vest and patch back. From there, took my niece and we rolled over to the American Legion's Party for Veterans, since this is Armed Forces Day. And, want to thank everyone who served, just like I know Santana served proudly in this nation. Similar uniform to mine, as we were both Navy combatant men. And we went down to Freeman Lake in Elizabethtown, had a great picnic hosted by the American Legion in District 4. And yeah, signed up there. Since I'm already a member of the American Legion, I want to also join the Sons of the Legion, since my dad was a lifetime member of the American Legion. I like to be dual cool. And then I decided, hey, I might as well be triple cool and join the Legion Riders. So got applications in for that. Now that my kiddo is 14, I'm going to get her to become part of the American Legion Auxiliary. And yeah, we had a good time there. My niece won quite a few stuffed animals. There was a bouncy house, live band. I mean, they really went all out for us. Free burgers, free hot dogs. And I even got 2 coupons for free meals at Penn Station. So after a full 12, 14 hours out, yeah, Penn Station just filled me up. Well, from there, let's see. There's so many things going on. I know we Yeah, we went to Glendale to their spring fling. Glendale is just a wonderful small town here in Kentucky. But that's the town that is, if you don't know, if you don't live here in Hardin County, that's the town that just got hit hard. When I got here in 2021, they were talking about this brand new electric vehicle battery plant that was going to be built. Billions of dollars were invested, and the government, gave this money for it to be built in order to build electric vehicle batteries for Ford's top of the line electric vehicles, such as the Ford Lightning, the Mach. Let's see, was it the electric Mustang and other vehicles that Ford was making. We know that as soon as the Orange Buffoon came into office, he slashed and burned all EV incentives and also cut all of those regulations that were meant to force all vehicles to be more economical when it comes to fuel. You had to have a much higher miles per in future. Basically, it was incrementally going to be increased so much that it would have been very inducive to have an electric vehicle. I've got an electric vehicle. I've got a Chevrolet Bolt that I've been driving since 2022 and love it. Got over 100 some thousand miles on it now, maybe even 130,000. And yeah, I love not being a slave to the petroleum market and not having to be a slave to OPEC, not being a slave to American petroleum. So I feel good, confident every day that I'm helping out, this land to have free, clean drinking water. I know that I'm not polluting the air, so my kids aren't going to have to wear respirators, in the future if everything goes my way, which it's not due to what happened. So Glendale got hit hard. Only 3 months was that plant open, and then it shut down just recently. And we know 1,600 people lost their jobs. Now, Ford's promising that they're going to make that plant into electric battery production facility and that they're going to hire up to 2,100 people when they turn it around. But all these batteries are going to be for data centers, not for cars. And that is an absolute travesty. That was a lot of fertile farmland. We're talking hundreds of acres of farmland that went to make this monstrosity out there that ended up not being it ended up being a bit of a boondoggle. So we know that Blue Oval SK pulled out, and Ford now they're saying that they're going to make something of it, but Glendale was hit hard. You know, they had some real growth, just like this whole county did, and that's really been hit hard, and that's going to be biting us in the buttocks when it comes to our land valuation. And my property went from being 225,000 when I bought it in 2021. I think it's now valued at 270. But can I really sell it for that now that we're not having all these people moving in to keep building and producing at that plant? That's the question. And that's something that the fiscal court, which I am trying to get elected to, and I would love you to vote for me, that's the big issue that we're going to have to deal with.
So
So,
I think that's something that like a lot of towns in America like face today is they have this promise of jobs, right? That hey, if you if you give us the tax breaks and then you have your taxpayers pay for our infrastructure to build this thing, like, and then they will come, right?
right.
And often the
Well,
taxpayers are the ones that are left holding the bag.
and but the thing was, they were actually coming, and it was actually, it was going to be something. But we saw how how the votes went, um, and that just really, a week before they announced the shutdown, I had promised here on air that I was going to, if elected, I was going to spend my money buying the Ford Lightning to support our local economy. But look what happened. So anyway, after those 4 events, the last thing I went to was in Cecilia. The fire department there was having a picnic, some good old country fried chicken and other, I think it was barbecue sandwiches, along with an auction for St. Jude's. They've been raising money this whole month or more actually for St. Jude's, and the fire departments around here do an amazing job of that. Matter of fact, they even, as I announced last night, came by the house with the lights flashing, which made the dogs bark. But I actually gave them a donation, and I did buy. Let's see, I bought at auction a Browning pocket knife, which I was disappointed to find out it's made in China. But hey, there we go. But anywho, that was my evening all the way up until now, and here we go. Santana and I, we are very, very concerned about the way America is headed when it comes to this promise of life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness. This, understanding that that is something that Providence has endowed us all with, and that can't be taken away from us. That's what it said when they said it's an inalienable right. That means no one can take those from you. You are born with those rights. They're innate. They're deep in you. That right to life, liberty, and pursuit of happiness. So now, what the problem is, to have that, you need government of the people, by the people, and for the people. And with the kakistocracy, this oligarchy of the Epstein class, we've got a government of the gentry, for the gentry, and by the gentry. And by that I mean all the oligarchs like Musk and, Peter Thiel. They're the ones that everything is being built for and all the favors are being done for. So now, why does that matter? Well, we're going to talk here about how there is a man down in Memphis, right, Santana, whose life is about to be taken from him. And the evidence points to the fact that this man is innocent. Now, I remember back when I thought I was, a raging conservative only, and my dad tried to educate me, and he's like, son, it'd be better that 10 people that were guilty
Go free.
Go free. Yep. Than, one person that is innocent be executed. So let's take a little gander here at about how often it's estimated innocent people are executed. And it's actually more than 1 out of 10. Evidence supports this. Let's look at the evidence real quick. So let's see here.
Significant risk and error.
So let me go back up on that just a little bit. All right, here we go.
So the Innocent Project estimates that there are about 4% of these sentenced to death are likely innocent, highlighting a significant risk and error in the system. I think that if they were more strict about the punishment and availability, but you had to actually be certain that something happened, actual have evidence and proof of putting that person, pulling the trigger or whatever, and obviously there's more of a backing to saying that that person should be killed for it.
Yes.
So 4%. Are you a mathematician there, Santana?
Sometimes when I'm not drinking.
So, I stayed at a Hotel 6 last night. So I'm going to say that 4% is what? 4 out of 100, right?
Yeah.
So
easy.
we're looking at
all
more.
day.
Isn't that more than 1 out of 10?
Yeah. So that's yeah. So 4% is
Yep. So we're looking at a real serious deficit in truth, justice, and the American way. You know, absolutely, that is un American to kill innocent people. I would expect that in Iran. I would expect that in Yemen. You know, I would
So like
expect that
to that
now
point,
in Afghanistan. You know,
to that point, like if 4 out of 100 flights that take off crash, that's a serious issue.
exactly.
Like just think
I
about it
couldn't say
in
that
that
better.
perspective.
That's the perspective to think about it. Would you even get on a plane if you knew that 4 out of 100 were going to take off and kill innocent people? No, you wouldn't. So today I'm honoring my departed brother since it is Armed Forces Day. We used to like to sip lemonade and bourbon in honor of our papaw, who that was his favorite drink. But what's your flavor of the day? Tom's asking.
I'm drinking Heineken.
Heine. All right. You're a Heine man. Got it. We got so Tom, yeah, he asked what the flavor was. That's why I told him what mine is, but he was actually asking you. I actually partaking of Tin Runner. So that's made here by Boundary Oak here in Hardin County. Apparently, there is a number 10 um, race car, NASCAR racer. He ordered a bunch of his own, bourbon to give out and didn't pick them up. That's actually really good weeded bourbon. All right. So Tom is saying one is too many. And yeah, I'm sure Tom would agree that four is far too many. We got Ryan on here saying the Constitution is cooked. And Ryan saying we're witnessing the end of democracy. So, you know, we have got to uphold the Constitution. That's what you and I both swore an oath to. You know,
One hundred
my
percent. Yep.
my loyalty is to the Constitution. It's not to a an elected leader. You know, that's the difference between us and other forms of government. We have fealty to the Constitution. The Constitution recognized, and the founding fathers recognized that they did not set up a perfect system. They knew that it had some warts, and you have to keep on burning off the warts. But instead of burning them off with, by having a frequent revolution or civil war, they made it possible for all of us to bloodlessly go petition our government for grievances and, enact change. They also made it to where it wasn't easy to willy-nilly change the Constitution, but we can actually go to the ballot box now free. Yeah, we're going to talk about how right now the Supreme Court is trying to limit the extent of power that minorities have at the ballot box once again. But ever since Andrew Jackson made it possible for men that did not own land, white men that did not own land, to actually vote, we've done nothing but have a history of increasing, the types of people that we allow to vote. Now we've had some horrible missteps, violent and tragic missteps, but we've had a history of, after having some buffoons like we have in Supreme Court now, as a majority, along will come some that would, correct the course. But Thurgood Marshall, for instance, one of those. But now, yeah, we're taking definitely some steps backwards as the caucusocracy is realizing their days are limited. You I don't think they're understanding it enough, but they're doing everything they can to stack the results of democracy in their favor and to undo democracy through using quasi-democratic process. And I think that by blocking some folks from representation, that they're going to be able to quell the overwhelming changes that American demographics are seeing. And history is not going to be kind to these folks. What do you think?
Absolutely not. Yeah. Um, so yeah, I'm reading this comment here. Better way to 2A. We can't vote our way out of this one. Buy a gun. So I completely
Well,
agree with that. We have the soapbox, the ballot box, and then the ammo box, right?
And Malcolm X said that folks had a choice in the 60s. Either go to the ballot box en masse, overwhelmingly en masse, or it would be the bullet box. Well, as someone who still has nightmares at night and is woken up choking my wife because I thought I was being killed by a person I killed, and also on other nights who wakes up weeping, remembering the innocent children that we killed in combat. Everybody that's pushing on either side, of our system, either left or the right, for us to start shooting our way into the form of government that we want, you've got to fucking recognize that those of us veterans who've been in combat, we know what it's like. We know the fucking hundreds of years it will take for that terror to leave our conscience, for us to expel this evil once we start killing each other. It's, our kids aren't going to have a bunker to run to. So, if we think that it's just going to be adults that are going to get killed, we're highly mistaken. And if we think that no innocent people will be slaughtered, we're highly mistaken. And every civil war, the good guys and the bad guys kill the wrong people. And then they can't fucking sleep for the rest of their life. And then many times they end up taking their own life, So I'm a veteran who has a brother who took his own life after surviving losing his leg and hand. So I know the fucking tragedy that people are pushing for when they say, hey, man, and this is, let's start killing each other, in order to change the government. No, we all have to drag people to the polls.
Yeah.
We've got a primary that's going on right now. I already voted in it days ago, but the official primary day is the 19th. We've got people who aren't being given a voice, and they need to be given a voice. They need to be platformed, and we need to choose folks with not just integrity, but with fucking cojones, that will fight this system and change it the way it's designed to be changed.
Yeah, absolutely. I agree with you 100%. So every single peaceful option that we have needs to be exercised, right? And that is civil disobedience, which is we're seeing a lot more of these days, right? And then our peaceful nuclear option, which is the general strike, right?
And then the next piece, we have to do that, is not just voting. Democracy isn't just voting.
Yeah.
It is civic action.
Correct.
It is amassing ourselves and to redress grievances. That was written in there, that we have to do that. But like I say, I just don't want any more fucking PTSD nightmares. I'm working hard as I can to get over the last 2 wars that I've been in. I'm still trying to recover from getting my brother to join the military twice and him taking his own life. So anyone who thinks, that, the first option or the current option that we should go full bore for right now is killing folks. Well, hey, if you maybe have a psychotic personality that doesn't fucking get bothered by killing people, which some people do, they make great soldiers because you can just fucking kill anybody and never have a nightmare about it. But if you're not that guy, then when it's all fucking over and you've killed your neighbor's kids and the wife and husband, you're going to have some PTS fucking D. That's just the way it's going to be. So I really hope that folks realize it's time that there's only what? You mind looking it up on your side? What percentage of Americans actually vote in midterm elections on average? We've had times when it's been different, but we've got, if we're just going to turn out on the normal numbers, then yeah, we're just saying, we really don't give a fuck as long as we can play our video games, watch reality TV, and we'll just let it fucking go its course and let the cacistocracy do whatever the fuck they want, then those lazy fucks should not be surprised when people do start, using the Second Amendment, but people have got to quit being lazy when it comes to democracy. Get out in the streets now and then get to the polls this month here in Kentucky and in November. All right. Hey, goes to John Brown. So John Brown is telling me that his comments are getting removed, and this is totally fucking asinine. So I think I know what he's posted, and I'll type it in here at the end, see what happens. All right. So we got Renaissance Hillbilly on here saying, good evening, Renaissance Hillbilly. Ryan saying that, hey, we're the settlers and the imperialists. Renaissance Hillbilly says, I was voter number 15. Freaking awesome. Yeah, I voted, I think it was either Tuesday or Wednesday. I'm trying to remember myself. Tom says, my great-grandmother was born in 1877 in Woodville, Virginia, in the shadows of a lot of fighting of the 1860s. Two of her uncles fought under John Mosby. I'm not in favor of war. Yeah. And I've been doing a lot of studying of my ancestry, especially, the Kentucky ancestry, and mostly proud of it. But then I have some, what do you call it? Side branches that, not proud of at all. All right. Static Somni says, OMG the dog. Dom says, I am, however, in favor of being able to defend self and care for others. And absolutely, that is what that Second Amendment is there for. Absolutely. But say it is there in case some folks prevent our democratic elections from actually occurring, and they do trash the Constitution, then yeah, you've got another choice. DSA in front says, ensure people get to the polls. If you got to get a wheelbarrow out, then get people to the fucking polls. Absolutely. You've said exactly what I'm saying, but better than I could say it. Tom says, I do not belittle PTSD. That shit sucks. Yeah. And I just, that's the thing that I am really, it concerns me. I know how to kill. Also, obviously, because that was what I was trained for, and for 20 years, and I've been in two wars. First Gulf War, and then that 20-year war that we just ended recently. But just anybody who's advocating for that instead of trying to make sure that we've made every possible last-ditch effort to take over this democracy the way the Constitution made it to be taken over. Yeah, they're not going to sleep well at night because And Ryan says, why would you kill kids, Ryan? Unless you've been in war, that's what the fuck happens. That's what the fuck happens. No one asked for it, but that is what the fuck happens. There is crossfire. There is no clean fucking war, you know? And that is the way it goes. Good guys and bad guys alike, you know? So human nature ends up being just like the Lord of the fucking Flies, the Lord of the Flies novel, if you've ever been in combat, you know? The worst of humankind and our worst tendencies come out in war, not the fucking best. You know, there is no, oh yeah, easy fucking clean way to kill people. You end up doing what we're talking about tonight. You know, combat does what we're getting ready to highlight tonight on a grand scale. It kills people that shouldn't be killed. You know, you get demagogues on either side who think that they're absolutely right and they know who the good and the bad are. And there's no middle ground for them. All right. So the Renaissance Hillbilly says democracy is keeping yourself informed, but because your buddy says something on Facebook doesn't mean they know what they're talking about. That's absolutely freaking right. Vote early and vote often. Thank you. I've quoted my dad saying that not too long ago. Tom says the ghost of John Brown is right. Voting is the absolute minimum, and it is absolutely the absolute minimum, right? Old guy in North Carolina says, I'm discussing. Can you see any of these? Because it's getting really messed up on my end over here.
Yeah, I can see
I'm
them.
discussing my wife are volunteering as poll workers. Yes, that's another thing that people really, really should do right now. Because we know they plan on stacking the decks because all the good folks that were nonpartisan when it came to being poll workers, you know, when he lost the election, that one in the middle, when he didn't become 45 twice and Biden got elected, it was due to honest poll workers. But you know, they are planning to put dishonest poll workers in there. So people have got to get out, get off their ass, you know, ask for that Tuesday off or a week off if that's what it takes, since there's early voting also, you know, and be the poll worker.
Yeah, like our democracy depends on it.
Absolutely. It cannot last without this. DSA Ironfront said, read The Things We Carry by Tim O'Brien. DSA Ironfront, thank you. That, you know, for if you've never been to combat, go on ahead, pick that up. They Move says amen. If you haven't read Things They Carry, yeah, that's what you will carry the rest of your life, you know? And that's what we put, that's the position we put 18-year-olds into when we ask them to start, and 19-year-olds, 20-year-olds to start killing people, you know? We asked them not to go for retribution when they just lost their best friend and they decide, oh, I'm going to go into this place and kill every man, woman, and child I find because I heard that that's a, you know, town of a party majority that I don't like. So I'm just going to willy-nilly kill everybody. And if you don't think that happens in fucking Civil War, you're deluded, you know? Watch, what was it? I'm trying to remember the movie about the American Civil War based in North Carolina. Was it, I want to say Cold Creek. Man, what talk, you know, I was talking, if you remember this, character tried to leave the southern side, tried to make his way back home. And all along the way, he witnessed, you know, the atrocities of both sides, you know, the Northerners and the Southerners, you know, treating each other absolutely atrociously and thinking that they had the holy right to do it, you know. So again, that's what we just got to really look at. All right. But we came on here to talk about this. So let me play a little clip of what we're here to talk about, which is, you know, life being taken from folks, from those 4 out of 100 folks that are innocent. So, and where you are, Santana, we'll play this, then you can talk about what you know more about it.
The man you see here is named Tony Carruthers. He will be killed by the state of Tennessee on May 21st. Before the state carries out this irreversible punishment, It must answer the most basic question. Do they have the right person? In February of 1996, Tony Carruthers was denied an attorney and forced to represent himself in a death penalty trial. He was convicted and sentenced to death for his alleged involvement in the kidnapping and murder of 3 people. Number 1, the DNA and fingerprint evidence. There is no physical evidence linking Tony to the kidnappings or murders. All of the physical evidence they did collect either does not match Tony or has never been tested. And there are 6 still unmatched fingerprints that we know don't match Tony, the victims, or the other alleged perpetrators. The jury was never told about the 6 unmatched prints or that none of the fingerprints at the crime scenes matched Tony. The identity of the person whose prints were left at the crime scene is still unknown to this day. There was DNA. 2 bloodstains found on a piece of cloth used to bind the victims contained male DNA that did not match Tony, the victims, or the other alleged perpetrators. The identity of the person whose DNA is on that cloth is unknown to this day. Yet the state...
So before we go on, what the fuck? Sorry, I should have said whiskey tango foxtrot so they don't, start kicking me off here. But what the heck? What do you think there, Santana? What do you know?
Yeah, so I mean, DNA evidence is it's crucial, right? I mean, they use it to convict people all the time. The Innocent Man Project uses it to exonerate people, and like all the facts aren't being considered in this case. They weren't when it was tried. They had a member, somebody that had testified was a paid informant that later recanted their testimony.
And that happens all the time.
Yeah.
Because often those informants are folks who have committed crimes.
Yep.
And this is their way, to
get
out. Yeah. That's their out. So they'll make up a story to get themselves, out of the noose.
Yep. So, I mean, and the thing is, test the DNA, right? That's evidence in the trial. We have the technology, like
absolutely
test it before you send an innocent man to death.
Absolutely.
Refuses to compare prints or DNA to the alternative suspect. In 2011, Tony's co-defendant told an investigator that Tony was not involved in the kidnapping or murders and pointed them to an alternative suspect whose DNA and fingerprints are on file at the medical examiner's office. The unidentified prints and DNA have never been compared to this alternative suspect. The state has refused to consider this evidence that could exonerate Tony. Other items were collected from the crime scenes that the state inexplicably never tested for DNA or fingerprints. These items include fingernail scrapings from the 3 victims and the bindings found with the victims. Testing this DNA could reveal that another person committed this crime. For years, Tony has been asking the court to compare the unidentified fingerprints to the alternative suspect, and Tennessee has refused. Number 2, false testimony from paid informants. With no physical evidence linking Tony to the crimes, the prosecutor's case was based almost entirely on the false testimony of a single paid informant named Alfredo Shaw, who later recanted his testimony. This testimony to a grand jury was the main reason prosecutors were able to charge Tony at all. That paid testimony wasn't even a first-hand account of the crimes. He merely claimed that Tony confessed to him. But Shaw later recanted all of this in a TV interview, saying the confession never happened. Yet, before Shaw testified at trial, prosecutors threatened him with perjury charges if he contradicted his original grand jury testimony. Under that pressure, Shaw repeated the false confession story to the jury. And the jury was never told that the witness had been paid by the state to testify. The state lied about it repeatedly for 30 years. Prosecutors repeatedly withheld information and lied on the record, insisting that Alfredo Shaw was not paid or otherwise incentivized in exchange for his testimony against Tony. It wasn't until August of 2024 when they finally handed over more than 20 pages of evidence showing ledgers of payments between Shaw and law enforcement from the 1980s until at least 2003. Number 3, Tony Carruthers was forced to represent himself at trial despite the Constitution guaranteeing a right to an attorney in all criminal proceedings. The judge...
Wait, what? Whiskey Tango Foxtrot again there, Santana. What do you know about that?
Yeah, basically that. He represented himself. All of this was denied.
Forced to? I mean, that is a flagrant violation of the Constitution.
Yeah.
I mean, you cannot violate that part of the Constitution.
Yeah, and the way that I see this, right, and this is a heavy-handed miscarriage of justice. This is basically Tennessee reinforcing Jim Crow, right? There's no other way. There's no other way about it, It's
way around
heavy-handed, like, yeah.
Man.
forced him to represent himself in a death penalty trial simply because he became frustrated with Tony's repeated firings of appointed counsel. Tony's severe mental illness contributed to his behavior with his attorneys, but that does not mean that he waives his right. Repeatedly firing counsel while still requesting an attorney does not waive your right to one. Nevertheless, he was forced to defend himself alone. One of those lawyers, William Massey, later testified, quote, "I am watching a man trying to defend himself in a death case. He wants me back aboard. I'll come." And they wouldn't. They wouldn't let me back aboard. After the removal of his lawyers, Tony Carruthers repeatedly begged to have counsel appointed, stressing that he was not competent to handle a trial without an attorney. His requests were denied on January 11th, February 20th, March 4th, and April 15th, 1996. Because Tony didn't have a lawyer, key aspects of the prosecution's case went unchallenged, including the circumstances surrounding Shaw's statements and his relationship with the state. During Shaw's testimony, for example, Tony directly asked Shaw if he had ever worked as a confidential informant. The prosecutor, knowing that Shaw was indeed a paid informant, objected to relevance, and the court sustained the objection. Tony's trial was so filled with errors due to his forced self-representation that on appeal, the court found his co-defendant deserved a new trial. The state then offered that co-defendant an Alford plea in 2006 and was sentenced to 27 years in prison. He was released in late 2015. If Tony is executed, he will be the first person in nearly a century to be put to death after being forced to represent himself at trial. Tennessee, I ask you again, do you have the right person? When the answer is a matter of life or death, they should be forced to take another look. I am partnering with the ACLU to urge everyone to sign the petition at the link in my bio to halt Tony Carruthers' execution on May 21st in just a few days and test the forensic evidence. We are delivering this petition to the governor's office on Monday, May 18th. Make sure your name is on it now. The lawyers on his team are doing everything else, working day and night, and they will until the last minute. Share.
So, I mean, 1996, man. This is a long period to have a miscarriage of justice.
Absolutely.
Right? My gosh.
And it wasn't like DNA testing and sequencing like in its infancy back then.
Yeah, but I mean, you've got it now. But it wasn't complete infancy. I mean, it was really getting to be a fairly common thing by 96. If I remember correctly. That was, it was more and more people like, oh yeah, we're turning things over because of DNA.
So, this is just, the cherry on top of all the things that are happening here in Tennessee, especially in Memphis, right? Tennessee is ground zero for alt-right Christian white nationalists, right? This is where they want to make like their example. But
it's also the bedrock of African American Christian activists.
Correct. Yes.
Are pushing for true liberation theology.
Yep. But this is ground zero. This is the battleground here. And we're fighting a good fight here in Memphis. And we're just silenced. Like people don't see nationally what we do here.
Well, I've highlighted some things you've sent me before. Now I have to ask, because I lived for about 4.5, 5 years in Nashville when I was in college. Now live only 2 hours from there, but only occasionally get down there. That I know is a very diverse city also. Are there things like that going on in Nashville that you know about, or are you just too far removed from it to know?
So Memphis is very unique. It's a very unique city in Tennessee. I know
you got the Mississippi Delta right there that has had,
right.
Quite of its own congruent history with yours.
Yeah. And I mean, we've teamed up with a lot of things with people in Nashville with actions, but it just our legislature it just beats down and punches on Memphis. And like the attitude in Nashville is like, hey, Memphis is horrible, like they're not a part of us. And then Memphis is like, hey, we are on our own. And we have a saying in Memphis is Memphis versus everybody. And I mean,
yeah, well, it's obviously that way now.
Yeah.
I would predict that the next place they're going to start trying to go crazy is Nashville. But of course, which one has the bigger tourist destination cachet? That's Nashville now, right? I mean, I know Memphis still has some good
Yeah.
tourist cachet, but not quite what Nashville has become. You know,
Yeah. So I'm not sure as far as tourism goes. Like we have a lot of tourism because of like Elvis, Stax Museum, like
Beale
people
Street,
that Beale
but
Street,
it's
like
still not quite the pool of Music Row
in
in
Nashville.
Nashville, and now
Yeah.
you know it's changed. I went to college there in the mid to late '90s, and since I came back, you know, in 2021, went down. I'm like, holy moly!
Yeah.
I mean, it's become way more similar to Vegas and New
Yeah.
York City. You know,
Yeah.
sky
So
rises that weren't there.
Nashville is
So
more like redneck Vegas, right?
yeah,
They call it Nash Vegas.
but still with a lot of diverse folks, and it's a very blue city. Like they haven't
Yeah.
had a Republican mayor in decades. You
Well,
know,
with this redistricting that they did, it's like it's changed a lot, right?
Nashville too.
Yeah. So um, the part that I live in is in the same district as Brentwood, Tennessee,
Oh,
which is
which is
like
the richest.
south of
I know. You know, I
south of
live right near it.
Nashville,
Yeah,
right?
yeah,
And you
yeah.
need to take a look at these maps that they redrew. They are absolutely ridiculous.
I've
Like,
glanced at it. Of course, I'm truly focused on Kentucky and Hardin County, but
yeah.
yeah,
So they basically carved out the black vote like all over Tennessee.
and all over the South now, unfortunately.
Yeah.
So we got someone here asking, you know, it's terrible times. He's calling himself. What about using the economy as a weapon of the wealthy? I don't know if he's asking what about when they use the economy as a weapon against us, or how about us using it against them? I've if you remember back in February, I did Freedom from Fascism February. Quit using Amazon. Quit helping Bezos. I refuse to be a cuck of Bezos now. And I've actually started, if I can order it on Amazon, then I know I can go order it from the manufacturer straight, you know. But why not just go buy stuff locally? That's what I'm also doing, because local shops around here, a lot of them are veteran owned. I want to support my fellow veterans here in Hardin County, but also every dollar you spend locally is almost completely reinvested back into the economy. It's the money stays here. But if I buy something in Minnesota, or if I buy something from Texas, money doesn't come back to Hardin County. So that's another thing I've been looking at. Like, okay, if I take the time and I'm not lazy, I can find almost anything I want to buy and need to buy right here in Hardin County. And if I can't, I don't need to go to Bezos. I can go directly to the source. Or I couldn't find some shoes my size. So I went directly to the source of the manufacturer instead of giving Bezos his, cut. And I think that's, if you talk about using the economy as a weapon, not to facilitate the oligarchs from crushing us, that's what we got to do. Every dollar we donate to their war chest, well, it's just that, it's a war chest against us.
Yeah. And
Now,
we started locally. We started a boycott list here locally.
There you go. That's what we need.
Yeah. So a lot of the local activists have a running list. And people look at it like, hey, these are restaurants that are for freedom, right? Not for occupation. These are people that care. These are local dollars that care about our rights and our freedoms. And so, yeah, I will definitely link that here in the chat after the live, and maybe this is something that we can do throughout the South and throughout the nation.
Yeah, we've got to. That's a key thing. There are manufacturers even that are not on the side of the fascists. Give them the money, you know.
Yeah.
But if you can also do it to a small mom and pop group, do that. You know, like we had just Barnes and Noble here, and I like Barnes and Noble. You know, I'll go buy from them, their brick and mortar store. But now we've got a local bookstore, and hey, I'm going downtown and buying my books locally. You know, being a big reader, and why would I? Number one, I'm not going to buy books on Amazon anymore, and Barnes and Noble's got plenty of money still, you know. But
Yeah.
mom and pop joints, that's the bread and butter of America. Whoa, looks like, did we lose you, Santana? Can you hear me? I can't see you. Uh-oh. Well, there you
Yeah.
go.
Yeah.
There
Can
you're back.
you?
Yeah, you're
All
back
right.
now. Awesome. So, old guy in North Carolina. You want to read what he says there?
Wow, no physical evidence linking him, no attorney, and unmatched prints and DNA evidence ignored. Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. So this is going to turn into one of those things. It's like, hey, we are reinforcing Jim Crow South, and boom, heavy-handed. And it's just red meat for the races, the division, and the people who benefit from that division is the billionaire class, right? It's oldest trick in the book.
Well,
100%. Yeah, it works.
you know, John Brown, there goes to John Brown there saying the justice system in Tennessee and the South as a whole wears white robes at night and black robes during the day. Well, and it is time to vote them out. You know, Tom Armstrong says, is the link to the petition in your notes? That was in her notes. Unfortunately, I don't have a link to that petition. Let's see, I go back to that and find it in a second, see if we can see it there at the end. Terrible Time says, also known as the KKK. And Terrible Times says, the news recently reported white nationalists in Tennessee. Oh, yeah, that's a huge increase too, right? Having their own rich bunker towns that they're starting there. What I've seen. Old guy in North Carolina. It's Tennessee. Anyone can contact a Dolly. She seems to be a good person with near infinite power. Yeah. Memphis has a Democrat mayor who folds and is for sale to the Republicans. That is absolutely
Yeah, that is
freaking
100%
shame.
true. I will
That's
tell you
horrible.
that I went and visited our congressman Steve Cohen, talked to his staff, and they were basically like, what can we do, you know? And
Yeah.
that's not something that represents the leadership that we need.
Yeah. It's absolutely the leadership we got to have. All right, well, let's look at real quick. Unless she's going to repeat herself, we can determine it. Let's look at a link that you sent me earlier because I tried to find two. See if we get anything else out of it. If we don't, we'll just talk, more about it on our own. Let's see.
A man on May 21st who very well may be innocent, and we can actually do something about it. I know that it is hard to continuously get emotionally invested in stories, especially when we feel powerless. This is the only yesterday's news I'm doing because we have something we can do here. Tony Carruthers was convicted on no physical evidence. The fingerprints and the DNA at the scene do not match him, and they were never tested against the suspect his co-defendant named. He was also the first person in a century that was forced to represent himself at trial when he was denied legal counsel.
All right, so there's that link. If you guys can see it there, https action.aclu.org. Can you see it there?
Yeah, I have it here somewhere. I'm gonna put it in the chat here.
Okay. See if I can copy and paste from here. It looks like I might be able to. Yeah, it looks like I can copy and paste. Let's see. Copy it. Paste. There we go. Now, hopefully people that watch this after we're live can actually go in and click on it. Something I don't know about. Yeah. All right. Tom says Monte Mater rocks. Yeah, so that's what we're watching right now. There's the link, guys, to it. Hope. Hey, Tom, if you could click on that, let us know if you can actually open it from there. Link worked. Awesome. Now, again, I don't know if it'll work when I'm not live. I'm not sure how this interaction after I get off this streaming platform. But yeah, Tom says he's gone there. Awesome. Done that.
His co-defendant was granted a new trial because there were so many mistakes in the first trial. He was convicted on informant evidence. One of those informants was paid by the state, recanted his testimony, and the state lied about him being a paid informant for decades and hid it from the jury. The prosecution also lied to the jury, saying that the victims were buried alive, and they weren't. The medical examiner said that is not true, and jurors who were part of that trial said, if I had known they weren't buried alive, I never would have voted for the death penalty. The prosecution did it to get him on death row, and they were not willing to test the new evidence. The DNA doesn't match. The fingerprints don't match. He was denied representation, and he's supposed to be killed next week when what he deserves at minimum, at the bare minimum, is a retrial. So what I want you to do is share this story, share it to your stories and repost it. The ACLU is trying to stop this execution, which at best is faulty and at worst is intentionally framed around a man who had nothing to do with it. Sign the petition, share this video, share the link, share it to people you know, because we only have a week. Tennessee is set to execute a man on May 21st who very well may be innocent, and we can actually do something.
Yeah. So, yeah, we've really got to, that's got to be it. Want to show something else because, we're talking about, hey, I've got someone else that I like to follow a lot who is trying to lead the way for all of us not to go down this path of, armed insurrection and leave us with more PTSD. He was you've heard of Graham Plattner, right? Santana?
No, who's that?
Oh, really? Okay. Well, let me show you. I did a thing on how to basically pull young men away from toxic folks, toxic men on social media platforms.
Oh, the red pill pipeline.
Yeah. And this guy had talked about, I use him as an example. We've got veterans like you and me. We need to be mentors to young men who have no more idea what it means to be a man anymore. They think that red pill pipeline is about being a man. And what I'm finding extremely worrisome, Santana, is, I teach in Louisville, Kentucky, and most of my students are minority, or very poor white kids. And I'm finding that a lot of black kids think that what is it? Something USA. The guy that was killed not so long ago. What was his platform called?
Yeah, the Tipusa.
Yeah, that Tipusa is really good entertainment, and that's one of the actually thinking he was a cool guy, and so that just blows me away. The comments made about not getting on an airplane if there's a black pilot, or not getting a surgery if it's a female black surgeon. I'm like, what the F?
Yeah. So I mean,
so gullible. So parents are just not watching what the frick their kids are doing on social media.
Yeah.
Social media is more of a parent and spends more time with children than parents do, because we have fucking lazy parents right now. You know,
Yeah.
a parent would rather hand a kid a tablet and say, "Get the fuck away from me," rather than just sitting down and hear the kid talk nonsense if that's what they need to do. You know, I know
Yeah,
it's tough, but
and
that's
you know, a lot of a lot of it is too, like, a lot of kids want to be, you know, little edge lords, right? They want to say things that are like shocking, or, you know, like,
well, that's what is giving rise to,
correct. Yeah.
you know, fascism. Is
Yeah.
because it's entertaining. You know,
Yeah.
it's seen as a way to have an entertainment group
Correct.
rather than an actual helpful group.
Yeah, and
So yeah,
it needs to be nipped in the bud, you know? Like,
and well, we got a candidate in Maine who is a Marine Corps sniper veteran. We did, I think, 8 years maybe with the Marine Corps, and then went over and did some time with the Army, and then went back to Maine to be a oyster farmer. But we'll just give this is a long video. We definitely aren't going to play the whole thing, but just give a little bit of an idea of what he's talking about. He understands. You know, he could have been sucked into that red pill pipeline with the anger that he came back from combat with, and the disillusionment that he came back from combat with. You know,
yeah,
but
like
he says, hey, he likes to read, and he's always liked to read, and he's got a well-rounded idea of the world, and you know, not just what a local, you know, well, what some local red pillars tell him, or online red pillars tell him. Let's take a listen here. He wants a democratic revolution, but he recognizes that the last time we were in a situation like this, we got Franklin Delano Roosevelt, and he almost took us to where we needed to be before he died. Well, here, I'll let him tell it.
Ashamed of.
In Maine, there's a candidate for Senate who's electrifying the Democratic base and worrying the establishment.
I did 4 infantry tours in the Marine Corps and the Army. I'm not afraid to name an enemy.
He's Graham Plattner, a progressive 41-year-old military vet and oyster farmer. His pitch of starting a working-class revolution and a savvy social media strategy has seen him surge in popularity. But he's been dogged by controversy in his short time in the national spotlight.
Hey all, it's Graham here. As you've probably seen, there's a story that's broken about comments I made on Reddit in an earlier part of my life.
I am sorry, but it does not in any way reflect who I am today or the beliefs that I hold.
Now that his primary opponent, Governor Janet Mills, has dropped out of the race, Washington Democrats are pinning their hopes on him to help win back the Senate in November.
Nothing brings people together like wanting to beat Susan Collins.
Is he ready? I sat down with him to find out.
Not a bad interview setup.
Here's my conversation with Graham Plattner. Thank you so much for coming to New York on this gray day. But I guess you're used to it, I mean.
Yeah, well, I mean, a little bit. This is nice, though.
Yeah,
and at least we're inside on a rainy
inside,
day.
exactly.
Yeah.
We're not out in the elements as you normally are. You are now the presumptive Democratic nominee for Senate in Maine after Janet Mills dropped out. Your opponent, Susan Collins, is viewed as, I think, one of the most vulnerable GOP senators up for re-election. I'm sure you know this. A ton of cash is about to drop into the race on both sides. Are you ready for prime time?
Yeah, I mean, at the point, I'll be entirely honest. Like when we set this thing in motion back in August, the entire idea was we wanted to build a different looking politics in the state of Maine. Frankly, it's based around like community organizing. I'm a firm believer that organized people is the only actual place of power to conflict with organized money. And in our society, money is very organized.
So that's what we were just talking about, right?
oh yeah,
So, I mean, we have to organize, build community, build, you know, if you want to, in the South, bring back what, you know, the type of Democrats that I want to see brought back, which are the FDR Democrats. He describes himself as being an FDR Democrat, you know, and the folks that I know here in Kentucky that really know what it means to be a Democrat, they remember what their grandparents, like my grandparents, told them about what Franklin Delano Roosevelt did, for Appalachia, for all of Kentucky, during the Great Depression, how the people were dying in the streets, literally. We killed, did you know that we killed almost every single deer, antelope, elk, rabbit that there was in the United States during the Great Depression?
Yeah, yeah, and there's a big disillusion in the prepper community that, hey, it's everything's okay. You can just go out and hunt for your food, go out and
Yeah.
fish, and everything's
And
gonna
I
be
thought
all
that was
right.
true, until I thought that was true until I visited the Rocky Mountain Elk Foundation's museum in Missoula, Montana, when I lived in Montana, and learned that statistic, how we almost killed every single one. And we almost also wiped out all the waterfowl, in the USA. There were guys that would go out and take 5-gauge shotguns and just blow away whole flocks of ducks and geese that were sitting on the water, and they would do it with 10 shotgun shells in a shotgun. That's when we started having choke limits, and then limits to how many shotgun shells you could have in a shotgun. It was all developed to counteract that, and I just didn't realize that. So we don't want to go back to that, but to not go back to that, we've got to get leadership in there like FDR and like the FDR Democrats, and that's what he is, and that's what he's talking about.
Yeah.
So let me just see if he'll dive into it. If not, I'll just describe more if you're not familiar with
We
it.
set out on that. We were hopeful. We thought it was going to work. It's, of course, worked in a pretty spectacular fashion thus far. We're just going to continue doing exactly that. We're going to continue doing the public events. We're going to continue focusing on the field organizing. And we knew that all the money was going to come. We knew that we're up against the establishment of the American political system. In many ways, we were up against the Democratic establishment up until last week. And we figured at some point we were probably going to win that. And then we were going to go up against the Republican political establishment, which is where we find ourselves now.
Obviously the test right now is if you can run in a general election. And so, I want to ask straight up, because there have already been quite a few controversies, and we're going to talk about that a little bit later. But the GOP is going to dig up everything and more that they can.
Yeah. And probably lie at some point. I mean,
is there something new you want to get ahead of?
No, I mean, I've lived my life. I've been there for the whole thing. And because of that, I know what I've been through. I know what my behavior has been. I know all of it. And there's a reason that even after however many months that was, October, when they dropped the opposition research stuff on us, and the whole time there was always this oh, there's more coming. And I was like, I don't know what this more is going to be. And
these are all your social media posts, etc., which again, we'll talk about in a minute.
And
well, basically, you say you're not familiar with him?
No, I'm not.
Yeah, so he is pretty. He's very, very serious about taking America towards the position that FDR was trying to get us to, and that he was doing a good job of. And of course, we know that the Republican Party, ever since FDR died, they've been trying to dismantle every single thing he did to lift up the average working American. They want to get rid of Social Security. They want to get rid of all the things that came out of the New Deal. And they've been calling that socialism. I think his Reddit posts might have been something about, communism years ago.
It's because the Epstein class, they covet every single dollar that we give the government, right? Through tax revenue.
Well, they're the biggest, welfare queens that there are.
Correct.
Look, Musk and Thiel
Yep.
Palantir. That's how you say it, right?
Those are defense contracts, right? And who pays for those defense contracts? It's our tax dollars.
And that 1.5 trillion that they want now for the defense, bill, it's going to go. A lot of that's going to go to them and to the Trump sons, the eldest Trump sons, who invested heavily in the drone industry that got miraculously picked up the bid for the defense contracts as soon as this war started, or right before it started.
We are in the boss tweet era, I tell you.
Yeah, we absolutely are. Nothing more you can say about that. Well, I don't want to drag on for folks because we start off the mission, and that is for everyone to be aware of the Tim Carruthers situation in Memphis. And my final question for you is: are you still under siege there, as far as having brown shirts in town, or what's it looking like?
Yeah, absolutely. Tennessee Highway Patrol is part of the task force. They're working with ICE. National Guard, they have 40 personnel right now assigned to ICE operations. HSI, anything that is federal is definitely part of the task force, which reports and works with ICE. So, we are under occupation here. They are still raiding houses. They are still kidnapping people that look like me and putting them in camps.
Well, there is a kid that was just about to graduate from high school, JCPS, and I teach in JCPS, and he is now in the ICE detention facility in LaGrange, Kentucky. And that is, to me, just an absolute travesty. I don't even know if he speaks Spanish. That's what gets me.
I went to my my local pizzeria and picked up a pizza. Saw somebody I haven't spoken with in a long time, and he was telling me his roommate was snatched up by ICE and spent 2 months down in regular jail, and then was transferred to the Mason facility here in Tennessee. And he's still standing by to see what's going to happen with him. Like no trial, no warrant, no anything. He was just gone, snatched up.
I only live 35, 45 minutes from Churchill Downs, and that industry is not going to do well if all of their track workers get deported, and you're going to have a lot of millionaires pissed off and really saying their mind, and changing their tune, and that's what gets me. It's like, who wants to shovel horse shit? Now, I like the smell of it, but and I used to enjoy that. Yeah, I'd love to have it for my garden, but do I want to give up my master's level work, that I'm doing as a teacher, to go down the road from where I teach and shovel horse shit and take that job? Not the teaching pays great, but boy, it sure pays better than shoveling horse shit.
Yeah.
And that's just what I think folks really need to realize. And
it's capitalism off the rails, right? Like, eventually you end up eating yourself,
And that's I'll just say out loud what it was that John says. He keeps getting kicked off here for saying, but that was, hey, either the rich are going to basically check themselves, allow us to check them, or we're going to eat the rich. And I don't see why that comment needs to be taken down from this platform. But you know, the truth is the truth. You know, yeah. He says we can either tax the rich or eat the rich. It's their choice, and their punkers won't save them. So, yeah. Well, man, it's been a long show. I really appreciate you coming on, taking the time to
Thanks for having me.
share a lemonade with me and bourbon and your Heine. And yeah, really glad to have you. And thanks for bringing this to our attention. You know, an affront to democracy anywhere is an affront to democracy everywhere. You know,
Absolutely.
So yeah, you're not here in Hardin County, but man, you know, if it can happen there, it can happen anywhere, right?
Yeah.
So, all right, before we close off, Tom saying, if we eat the rich, we will go hungry after they're all gone. He says, horse shit. We'll find other food sources. Well, that's why I'm growing my own food. You know, I don't want all the pesticides that I'm sure they keep on their yard. And so, y'all, it's again, we got to remember Kentucky's motto is what we built this nation on, and that is that united we stand and divided we fall. Now, these divisions are only helping one group in America, and that's the Epstein class.
Correct.
You know, this thinking it's the left versus the right, or Republican versus Democrat. No, we've got to root out the guardians of the pedophiles, but at the same time, much as I don't like 91% of the things that Thomas Massey here in Kentucky votes for, I sure as heck appreciate the fact that he had principles enough to insist that the files, the millions of files, be opened to the public to look at, even though we see that they were mostly redacted, right? I also appreciate the fact that he went and pushed for everyone that was denied justice to be given justice. He also voted against the big ugly bill, and voted against, from what I heard, the all these ICE incursions we've been seeing. So yeah, he has libertarian principles I don't agree with otherwise, but I sure do agree with his stance on that. So again, that proves, he's a Republican, but he's someone that we can work with, and that's what people need to get back to, realizing we can't have only one party dominating this nation, even though we got a president who thinks he's going to set that up. But that's not right.
We can't even have two parties dominating this nation.
Well, our system was set up. If we don't have a parliament, unfortunately, if we had a parliamentary system, we could have more than two, but we were set up to have a bicameral, I guess you could say, system, just the way that our constitutional system was set up. Maybe we should look at some reforms for that, but that would take constitutional amendments, and a real heavy lift. We can't do that unless we all get to the polls. So again, let's don't be divided. We've got to be united for us, not for them. Don't let them gaslight us. And we recognize that if we love our brother as ourselves and our sister as ourselves, then we're going to, recognize that our neighbors are not the problem, and then we can love our neighbors as ourselves, stay united, and not be under the hills of the landed gentry, the kakistocracy. This oligarchy in a republic must fall, but our democracy in a republic must stand. Our constitutional democracy must stand. We must get to it and put it back in order through the marching in the streets, doing what you're doing, that good work you're doing there, Santana, in Memphis. And hey, together we can make it through it. But I don't want any more PTSD. Anybody thinks that that's the way to go, just go talk to, take some time, go talk to a vet that might tell you what it's really like. Or do like was recommended earlier, please read The Things They Carry by Tim O'Brien, someone who was forced into combat through the draft in Vietnam. And yeah, ask yourself if you think that it'd be any better if that type of thing or that kind of killing was happening here in America. No, it wouldn't. All right, y'all. Let's remember everyone deployed overseas right now and vote for folks who will bring them home. And y'all, bless your corazon. What does that mean in English there, Santana?
Bless your heart.
There you go.
Some we say in the South.
That's right. So, Aeromedic, evening, Carpe Diem. All right. Let's roll on and roll out.
All right. Thanks for having me, brother.
Thanks for coming.